Well, the people of Europe are showing some signs of life. It was nice to see again this Saturday people out in the streets in cities across Europe. I saw videos from London, Paris, Hamburg, and Vienna at least. This is also the same day when the Prime Minister of the Netherlands announces that their country is going to be locked down over the big scary Omicron variant for a few weeks. I think a whole month. And I'd like to say people aren't going to take it this time. But to be honest, I think that people are so hardened in their corners. This is not going to become a mass movement to where everybody all of a sudden, a vast majority, 2/3 of these societies says, you know what, no, we're fed up, we're done. If it's anything like it is here in the United States, this whole issue is so tribalized and so political that people are hardened into their corners. You have the laptop class who is very happy sitting at home on their Zoom meetings with their mask on, making the same salary that they were making pre-2020, and then you've got everybody who has to work for a living. You're either in one of those two groups. And depending on which one you fall in, that's going to 99% of the time determine what your position is going to be on all of this. And unfortunately for the people of Europe, their societies are controlled by the laptop class. I mean, look at the Yellow Vest movement. The Yellow Vest movement was huge. In any other, if it happened in a non-Western country, it would have led to a revolution. That government would have been forced out by the West. The West would have called up those leaders and said, you've lost your legitimacy. There's too much protest against you, and you have to step down. And whoever that president was would have ridden off into the sunset, and lived the rest of his days in Switzerland or something. But Emmanuel Macron, he remains. Emmanuel Macron, who was, like I said, with the Yellow Vests, the target of a revolution. Then comes 2020 and the Wu flu. He gets 1,000,000 times more tyrannical than he had been before, and quashes these people. And so if the Yellow Vests, back then, when we had a lot more freedom than we do now, weren't able to turn the tide in at least France, I know France isn't all of Europe, how are these protests now against the new lockdowns and the vaccine passports and and the mandates? How are they going to turn things around? I'm not saying don't do it. All I'm saying is I can't get too excited anymore. I see these things. They're important. I think they're necessary. I'm glad people show up for them. But they're not going to turn things around. It's not going to lead to an ultimate victory, but I do think that these sorts of movements and this kind of resistance, it makes it harder for the elites to do what they want to do. If everyone went along and complied with all the mandates and all the regulations and the passports, then things would have already gotten much worse than they are now, believe it or not. As bad as things are now, they can always get worse, and they would have gotten worse if not for this level of resistance. If you didn't have so many people who were, openly eschewing their passports and jumping over turnstiles and allowing themselves to be arrested for not being vaccinated. These people are making a great difference, whether they be in Europe or in New York City. We're seeing now even people here staging sit-ins at restaurants, refusing to show their proof of, sanitation, even though, ironically, it's a non-sterilizing vaccine. But in order to be considered sterile, you have to take this not only take the non-sterilizing vaccine, you must prove to everyone in public that you're one of the good guys. And in New York City, people are being jailed for that. So too are they in Europe. But before you martyr yourself, you have to kind of accept that you're not going to win. I mean, that's what makes a martyr a martyr. It's that in their life, they were not able to win. You know, that guy who self-immolated himself in South Vietnam, he didn't win in his lifetime. He died. The guy who stood in front of the tank in Tiananmen Square, who lasted longer? The guy in front of the tank or the people commanding the tanks? Despite that, the guy standing in front of the tank, he made a big difference. Made a huge difference in history. And he's a martyr who will live on forever. You know, I should look into that French guy who's running for president, whose video got age restricted on YouTube. I can't remember his name right now. I wonder if he's good on any of this stuff. Because, of course, he has the ire of the establishment already, so it really would be a waste if he wasn't against all this stuff. Once you go down the questioning immigration route, you're going to be irredeemable in the eyes of the establishment, so why not go all the way and join us anti-lockdown folks? And so maybe this guy, I'll look into him, because I'd forgotten about him. Maybe he's a kernel of hope if he's good on this stuff, and that will give some latitude. Like if a big country like France could just drop this stuff and move away from it, it'll make a big difference, just like it did here in the U.S. when Florida, a big state, the third largest state by population and by GDP and all that, when we said no to the insanity, that put a lot of pressure on other places. It created, it was a positive influence on our neighbors. And if one of these big European countries, it's obviously not going to be the UK, since, Corbyn is against this stuff. At least he's against the vaccine mandates, which, not surprising, he should be against this stuff. But, he's not even the head of the Labour Party anymore. So even if Boris Johnson was booted and a Labour guy was put in, it's not going to be Jeremy Corbyn, and so it's going to be Keir Starmer, who's just god-awful on everything. And Germany, Germany is an irredeemable country. Austria are the ones who have some of the worst restrictions, specifically on unvaccinated people, not even allowed to leave your house. Italy's a lost cause for now. Mario Draghi's in power. I think I called that one pretty well. They went and installed an unelected central banker to be their prime minister. What a suicidal nation. Although, I should clarify, I don't want to blame the Italian people too much, because, like I said, he was unelected. Nobody voted for Mario Draghi. So the only real place where there's any hope, for now, seems to be France. So I'll try and look into that guy and get back on that the next time I talk about Europe. Oh, now who knows? Maybe he is terrible on this stuff too. In which case, there's zero hope in Europe. But I want to end on a somewhat positive note today, and say, you know what? Hey, maybe there's a chance in one of these countries that this stuff could start to get rolled back. Could he be worse than Macron on this stuff? I doubt it. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.